Hey guys, tonight we step into the golden hush of a Judean morning, where sunlight spills slowly across dry soil and rows of silent vines. The air is cool, just before the heat sets in, and a few men, tough, calloused, and waiting, stand at the edge of a vineyard road. They're ready to work, eyes scanning the horizon for someone, anyone, who might offer them a day's wage. A man approaches, the landowner. He points, nods, and the first workers follow him in. It's the start of something that will upset everything we think we know about justice, effort, and reward. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. Now let's walk beside those early laborers. Jesus begins the story in Matthew 21-16, telling us the kingdom of heaven is like this vineyard owner, early riser, active, hands-on. He hires workers at dawn, offering a fair wage, 1 denarius, a typical day's pay. They agree. Simple enough. But as the sun arcs higher, he goes out again. 9 a.m., noon, even 3 p.m., and finally again at 5 p.m., finding others still idle. To each, he simply says, "You also go and work in my vineyard," without mentioning a wage. And when the day ends, the twist begins. The landowner pays the last ones first, and to everyone's surprise, he gives each the same amount. 1 denarius, equal, across the board. Naturally, the early workers are upset. "We bore the burden and the heat of the day," they say. "Shouldn't we get more?" But the landowner replies gently yet firmly, "Friend, I am not being unfair to you. Didn't you agree to work for a denarius?" Jesus gives the punchline, so the last will be first, and the first last. It's not about what you earned, it's about who you are to the one who called you. Here's the deeper truth. The early workers assumed that effort should equal reward. But Jesus is revealing something radical. The kingdom doesn't operate on transactional logic, it runs on grace, and grace, by definition, is not earned. We want fairness. God gives generosity. It's not that the first workers were cheated, they got exactly what they were promised. The offense wasn't injustice, it was equality given to someone deemed less worthy. But in heaven's economy, God isn't measuring hours. He's delighting in response. And maybe, just maybe, that makes grace even more holy, because it offends the ego while freeing the soul. So tonight, let's pray this. Lord, help me to rejoice in your mercy, even when others are blessed more than I expect. Teach me to trust that your grace is not a pie to divide, but a river to dive into. The heat now sits heavy on the land, pressing against the shoulders of those still waiting. Noon passes, then afternoon. The shadows stretch longer, and still, the landowner returns again and again, looking for more to invite. These later workers receive no promised sum, just a quiet invitation. "You also go and work in my vineyard." No negotiation, just trust, and they go. This part of the parable always feels so human. How often do we feel late to the party, late to purpose, too late to matter? And yet, in the parable of the workers, Jesus shows us that God seeks out the willing, not the early. The landowner pays every single worker 1 denarius, the full day's wage. From those who worked 12 hours in the blazing sun to those who labored for just 1. That's not just kindness, it's divine intention. Jesus is declaring something bigger than a paycheck. He's teaching us that God's reward isn't based on performance, it's based on presence. When the early workers grumble, the landowner responds with a piercing question. "Are you envious because I am generous?" Or more literally from the Greek, "Is your eye evil because I am good?" That's the turn. The parable isn't just about workers, it's about hearts. How easily we fall into envy when grace flows freely to others. Let's be honest. Many of us are early workers at heart. We've done the things, sacrificed, showed up. And when someone else seems to get ahead without the same grind, we feel that sting. Jesus knows this. He doesn't condemn the early workers, but he does confront their bitterness, because grace threatens a transactional mindset. And when faith becomes transactional, it's no longer faith, it's a contract. The radical idea here is that the vineyard owner owes nothing to any of them, and yet gives everything. Each worker's worth comes not from how much they've done, but that they were chosen, welcomed, trusted. This is where Jesus breaks from cultural expectations. The world runs on merit. God runs on mercy. And here's the paradox. The more you believe you deserve grace, the further you are from it. Because grace begins where entitlement ends. So what does this mean for us? It means that serving God is not about clocking hours or earning position. It's about abiding, responding, trusting that our worth doesn't fluctuate with our output. Let's pray. Lord, teach me to serve without calculating, love without measuring. Strip me of the mindset that compares and competes, and lead me into the joy of simply being yours. The day is fading now. Long streaks of amber light stretch across the vineyard rows. The last group arrives, those hired at the 11th hour. Maybe they'd almost given up. Maybe they were overlooked all day, or maybe they just hadn't known where to go. But here they are, walking into the vineyard with barely an hour of daylight left. And when the wages are handed out, they receive the same as everyone else. Imagine their surprise. And imagine the scandal brewing in the minds of those who had worked since dawn. But Jesus is telling us something essential here. God's reward isn't about the duration of the work. It's about the nature of the giver. The landowner is consistent in one thing: his desire to be generous. Jesus' listeners likely bristled at this story. Much like today, their world thrived on hierarchy and merit. Elders had status. The diligent earned more. The last to arrive were always less. But Jesus flips the structure. He's describing the kingdom, not capitalism. And this grace, it's not socialism, it's not favoritism, and it's definitely not injustice. It's sovereign generosity. When the early workers question the fairness, the landowner responds with depth. Didn't you agree to work for a denarius? Take your pay and go. I want to give the one who was hired last the same as I gave you. Want. That's key. He wants to give. Because that's what God is like. Jesus paints a portrait of a God who doesn't ask, "How long did you serve?" but rather, "Did you trust me when I called?" And there's a moment that echoes this parable with haunting clarity. The thief on the cross. He comes to Jesus at the very end, the 11th hour. And yet Jesus turns to him and says, "Today you will be with me in paradise." That thief never tithed, never served, never attended synagogue or followed a rabbi. And yet he was paid the full wage, not because of what he had done, but because of who called him and how he responded. Jesus wants us to understand that grace is deeply offensive to the ego, but endlessly healing to the soul. If we lived like this was true, we'd stop ranking people's worth. We'd stop fearing being too late or too little. We'd lean into the truth that in God's vineyard, we are all workers, and we are all beloved. So tonight, if you feel behind, unworthy, or like your best years have passed, you haven't missed your moment. He still calls, even now. Pray with me. Lord, whether I come early or late, let me trust in your goodness, not my efforts. You are not bound by the clock, and your mercy is not measured in hours. I surrender my need to earn and receive your love as gift. So let's linger here, just a little longer. The sun has now set over the vineyard. The tools are down. The day is done. And all across the field, the workers, early and late alike, hold in their hands the same coin, the same blessing, the same undeserved, overwhelming gift. Maybe one of them looks up at the stars and smiles for the first time all day. This is the quiet beauty of the kingdom Jesus invites us into. A place where what matters most isn't how hard we tried, but how fully we trusted. Where the jealous heart is gently healed by a generous one. Where those who arrive late aren't scolded, they're celebrated, because they came. And so did you. Tonight, you may feel like an early laborer. Faithful, tired, and quietly resentful. Or maybe you feel like you barely made it in. Either way, your place in the vineyard is sure. Your invitation stands. Your reward is waiting, not because of what you've done, but because of who He is. Let grace be enough. Let generosity be the standard. Let love, not labor, define your worth. And as you close your eyes tonight, picture that final scene. The field quiet, the air still, the light fading gently behind olive trees, and the sound of a kind voice, still calling, still welcoming. You are not too late. You are not too small. You are seen, chosen, and called. And that is enough.